Welcome to the Advocate channel.
There being a misconception as to the Book of Enoch and the angelic order. Several misconceptions has been given to the angelic order, a wrong interpretation as to why the Book of Enoch was not canonized. Knowing fully well that the book contains a lot of historical epoch and fact that talks about the Nephilim and the angelic order and how the angelic beings were trafficking heaven and earth. There been a misconception as touching these things. So join us as we dive into this topic, as well as uncover some mysteries at depth as touching this topic.
Jewish scripture occasionally refers to supernatural beings, like angels, like seraphim, like cherubim, like demons. But it doesn't really, or the Watchers is another one.
Jinn?
No,
that's different.
That's
Islam?
Yeah, that comes along.
Yeah.
That's about 600 years after.
Beck Lover somewhere is like Julian.
Yeah, no, the Jinn are a separate thing. That they're
Got it.
Entirely. They're good and bad Jinn. They're not even in this sort of category. But so you have these things mentioned in the Old Testament, but they're never really explained. And so,
As a scholar in ancient texts and Egyptology, he was able to uncover some of the mysterious nature and that surrounds the wrong representation of this order. So Welsh is a scholar who understands the framework of the ancient texts, the implications and how interpretation, scriptural criticism, he understands all of those things. So he was able to give clarity, precept upon precept, as touching this concept of the Book of Enoch and the angels. He also talked about the cherubim, the seraphim, their order, their divine nature, their connectivity into the divine order. So stay around as you enjoy the video as well.
within this 400-year period between the Old and the New Testament, the Jews are like, okay, what do we think of this? How are we to understand these supernatural beings that are created by God, that exist in some sort of parallel world, in the unseen realm, and they're interacting with one another, and they have different forms and functions. So one of the issues is that we often refer to a bunch of these things as angels. Angel is not what the thing is, it's what the thing does. So malach in the Hebrew, or angelos in the Greek, means messenger. So it is not a description of its ontology, what it is, it's a description of what it does.
Got it.
These are supernatural beings who go and they communicate messages to people. They're in some sort of relation in terms of their supernaturalness to other creatures like the seraphim and like the cherubim, who are supernatural divine throne guardians, which was a concept that was not foreign to the ancient world. You have Lamassu, which are the winged bulls with the human heads in Babylon, and you have sphinxes in Egyptian and Hellenistic culture. These were just concepts that existed within the ancient world. The gods have throne guardians. And within biblical Judaism, these are the seraphim and they are the cherubim. So sometimes you'll see those memes, the biblically accurate angels.
Yeah.
Those are cherubim. That's what they are.
Okay.
It's not actually an angel. It's kind of a misnomer in terms. But I get it, because we kind of broad brush with all these categories. The Book of Enoch,
Where she's trying to, go in depth to uncover some of the Nephilim, some of the giants that came earlier on, and how they had an affair in the Bible in Genesis chapter 8, in Deuteronomy chapter 7, how that they had affair with the daughters of men, right? They were fallen angels, they were Nephilims. They were giants that came from a different sphere entirely, from this sphere realm entirely. And when they came into the universe, into our universe, what they did, the first approach they did to mankind was to approach the daughter of men. And God saw that as an abomination, because there was about to be a mixed human involvement in the ways of man. So man will begin to replicate giants if care is not taken. So when God saw the evil, he foreknown the evil ahead, and then God was angry, and he needed to cut that from his creation.
Enoch is part of the literature that's trying to explain that. What on earth is this? Actually, if you go back to my wesleyhuff.com, so every Monday I do these posts that I call Manuscript Monday. So if you go back to the homepage, click that, scroll down, you'll see the blog post. Keep going. Right there. So biblically accurate angels. So I actually explain some of these. If you go down, go up, right there. So like angels, seraphim, cherubim, and then how these are portrayed. And I particularly go through the manuscripts and how both Christian and Jewish interpretation of them reflects them differently. But these are these characters which the Book of Enoch is trying to make sense of, along with demons. And so the way that they go about that is by capitalizing on the events that happen immediately before Genesis chapter 6 and the biblical flood, where you have the great-grandfather of Noah, Enoch, as this character who is explaining some of these fallen angels or beings. Genesis chapter 6 says that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were pleasing to the eyes and slept with them. And that these created men of renown. And that's the word Nephilim.
Ah, there it is.
So the trickiness of this is that in ancient Judaism, when it's translated into other languages, Nephilim is almost exclusively translated as giants. But the word, etymologically in Hebrew, Nephal, literally means to fall. So there's this whole narrative within ancient Judaism of these things are fallen angels. And so, but that's not the same thing necessarily in ancient Judaism as demons, and that's where it gets complicated.
Okay, so I'm just reading the background here so people have it. The Nephilim, let me pull this over here so it's on the screen. The Nephilim are mysterious beings or people in the Bible traditionally imagined as being of great size and strength. The origins of the Nephilim are disputed. Some, including the author of the Book of Enoch, view them as the offspring of fallen angels and humans. Others view them as descendants of Seth and Cain. The reference to them is Genesis 6:1-4. But the passage is ambiguous, and the identity of the Nephilim is disputed according to the Numbers 13:33. 10 of the 12 spies report the existence of Nephilim in Canaan prior to the conquest by the Israelites. A similar or identical biblical Hebrew term read as Nephilim by some scholars or as the word fallen by others appears in the Ezekiel 32:27 and is also mentioned in the Deuterocanonical books, Judith 16:6, Sirach 16:7, Baruch 3:26-28, and Wisdom 14:6.
Yeah, so let me read that for us. When men began to multiply on the face of the land, the daughters of them were born. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. Then Yahweh said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. These were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So that's literally what the Hebrew says. And so it's not like the Wikipedia article accurately says, it's not entirely clear what's going on there. But Enoch is part of the Jewish conversation in trying to flesh this out. And particularly in the Book of the Watchers, which is the oldest book. And so that's what Enoch is. Now, part of the confusion about the Book of Enoch is because the Book of Enoch is never considered scripture by the Jews, but ends up in the Ethiopian Bible.
Also make reference to the Ethiopian Bible. You also make reference to the Ethiopian Bible. Now you fully aware that the Ethiopians, they didn't really do much of canonization, right? When they received those texts in their languages, they translated them, but they received those texts and how the Christian faith flow down to them from their old concept of the Yeshua's cosmology. When they receive that, they do not just canonize some of those, take some books out and all of that. They compile some of those books, all of those books together in their Giz languages. So when they compile them together, which makes it quite different and unique in its contents than the present day King James and all of the other Bibles, right? Because they did take their time. And they understood why it's coming from God, then we have to take it as God. So they didn't really sit back to, pinpoint some of those things and remove some things from it. Let's dive into it.
And part of
Ethiopian Bible.
Yeah, so the Ethiopian church has is like a wing of, you have these different sort of overarching denominations of Christendom. You have today Protestants, Eastern Orthodox, Coptic, Roman Catholic, and then the Ethiopian church. And the Ethiopian church, we know that around the 4th century, missionaries from Syria went down to what then was referred to as the Kingdom of Aksum, which is in modern-day Ethiopia, and they brought with them a whole host of literature. And part of this literature was New Testament books in Greek and the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, which at that point was finalized. And the Ethiopian church took all of this literature, which included literature that nobody considered scripture at the time, and they appear to have just been non-discretionary and included everything. So all of the debates that were happening in the Latin West and the Greek East about what was and wasn't scripture, they looked at that and they said, we're not really interested in that. We'll just take everything. So in being non-discretionary, they end up just canonizing everything, which leaves them with a canon of scripture that is completely unique and includes books like Enoch, which the ancient Jews and every ancient Christian didn't believe. Well, actually, I should preface that. There were a couple of early Christians who said, we think this could be scripture, but then they accept when, you know, all the debates happen that, okay, those are pretty good reasons we're not going to accept it in the end. And so I don't know where the idea came from, but there is definitely a prevailing myth on the internet that the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest Bible. And that's not true. In fact, the oldest copy of the Ethiopian Bible, which is full in terms of a Genesis to Revelation copy, is 14th century. So it's a long, long time after. But there's a lot of talk online about Enoch, and particularly the copy of Enoch that is in the Ethiopian Bible, and that, oh, well, that's actually reflective of the original Bible because the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest. I don't know how that myth started. It's patently untrue. But what ends up being what we call the Book of Enoch ends up in its final form in the Ethiopic canon.
So if today is your first time of seeing this video, comment below, subscribe, click the like button, turn on the notification so you can receive an amazing content on your side. It's been a good ride with you. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Click the like button, comment below so you can be receiving an amazing content on your side. Bye for now.